So this weekend, 5 shows will be closing on Broadway. Among them are 1,000 Clowns with Tom Selleck, Stones, and
Hold on, do it again. Sorry, Johnny.
this weekend. Well, we learned this week that this Sunday, Broadway will lose 5 shows. The shows that are closing are 1,000 Clowns with Tom Selleck, Stones in His Pockets, which was a very well-received British import from the West End. That's closing. Blast. And Kiss Me Kate, that was a big surprise. Kiss Me Kate won the Tony for Best Musical Revival 2 seasons ago. That was a bit of a surprise. Another play that just opened probably 2 months ago, and it didn't really get a chance to establish itself, by Joe Bologna and Renee Taylor, a two-hander. I don't remember the name of the show, but
If You Leave Me, I Come Too?
Yes, good for you. Good on you for remembering. And let's see, is that 4 or 5? I don't know. The next wave is going to be staggering if it happens. There's been predictions that tourist-friendly shows like Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera would close within the next couple of weeks if the box office drop that we experienced last week and this week persists. Now, that would be uncanny because these shows are really well established, and they're really well, they're cleaning the streets, so we got to do that. They're mainstays, and if shows of that ilk go by the wayside, we're going to see a very changed Broadway in New York. So that remains to be seen. You know, if we have a war in the coming weeks, then I'm sure that people are going to go back to their televisions and spend inordinate hours of time watching the unfolding developments, and that will spell a big disaster. It'll mean that the disaster that began on September 11th will deepen beyond recognition. Sort of it'll look like the bruise on New York's entertainment industry will turn overnight into a very deep black and blue mark, and then possibly people will say that there's a gangrene effect, and one hopes that we'll be able to save that limb. But you know, with the people on Broadway, they were great. As soon as this happened, there was one day all the theaters were shuttered. That was Tuesday night. Obviously, shows didn't go on. For the most part, Broadway was dark on Wednesday, September 12th. And on Thursday, September 13th, the theaters opened again, and there were incredible stories about casts breaking out into God Bless America at the ends of the shows on stage, all company members coming out on stage and leading the entire audience in a heartfelt rendition of God Save America. And but aside from the producers, every show on Broadway was half full or 3/4 full. producers, interestingly enough, it's sort of an indestructible show at the moment. It's a show that people will actually stand online for cancellations for. That's amazing. And 200 to 300 people a day are standing outside the St. James waiting for cancellations for the producers, Mel Brooks' extravaganza with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick. Aside from that, we're seeing very lean houses for most of the Broadway theaters. Yeah, well, I'm concerned about not only Broadway, but off-Broadway and off-Broadway. It's all connected, and the ripple effect has been felt off-Broadway for theaters that were south of 14th Street. Many of them were not able to open through the week, until Saturday or Sunday. The box office devastation is so severe that a show off-Broadway that has to gross $50,000-$60,000 to break even and is only pulling in about $13,000 a week is losing $35,000 a week. You can't sustain a production off-Broadway for many weeks with those kinds of losses. Now, what's interesting is that the Broadway closings were announced very quickly, and it has to be probably what's behind that is that Broadway producers, being much more hardcore and seasoned, probably see the writing on the wall before anybody else, and are more apt to pull the plug on a show before anybody else, because they just are business people, and they look at the dollars and cents, and they have their reserves, and they could probably weather a storm, but they are not prepared to dig into their investors' profits, and so it's comparable to the sell-off on the New York Stock Exchange that we saw this week. It's people basically saying, look, we have portfolios that are losing value. We're going to have to sell our stock and get out before we are totally decimated. These are business decisions that are being made by people on the stock exchange, and probably the same thinking, same instincts are in play on Broadway, where they're looking at losses $200,000 to $300,000 to $500,000 a week. So even if they could weather the storm and stick it out, they decide that these losses are so precipitous that they really have no choice but to pull the plug. Now, I have a show that was supposed to open on September 12th, last Wednesday, off-Broadway, play by a very interesting playwright, Joe Penhall, who won the Olivier Award on the West End this year for a play called Blue Orange. And this is a very small production, what they call a showcase. And as showcases go, there was a lot of people interested in this play because of the playwright. This is an early play by Joe Penhall. There was a lot of anticipation. I knew from knowing the people involved with the production, I had every expectation that this was going to be a top-class production. And they unfortunately were in the path of the World Trade Center destruction, and below 14th Street, unable to open. The opening was postponed first until Friday, but that was not to be. When the cast assembled, they found out that one of the cast members had lost somebody in the disaster. That person was having a very hard time focusing, and out of solidarity, the cast decided to postpone a whole week. The opening is now set for this Sunday. They started performances on Wednesday, and it is an extraordinarily good production. I'm very proud of them. People have to sort of battle their way to the theater. They're, as we saw tonight, the Ground Zero is clearly visible in the distance. There are police and emergency people everywhere, trucks leaving the site, other trucks and emergency vehicles entering the site. You really feel like you're going into a war zone. To get to the theater, you have to be pretty determined. We've seen a lot of cancellations, and this little teeny show that I thought would stand a chance of maybe being picked up or moved to a larger theater is probably just going to run for the scheduled engagement, and then it'll just be gone. So I also have another show that I represent off Broadway called Six Goombas and a Wannabe at the Players Theater, and that's also a theater below 14th Street. That theater had to hold off on opening until the weekend. They're experiencing a lot of trouble, and who knows if they're going to be able to hold on and stick it out. So I sure hope they will. People need things to go to enrich their lives. We need that stability. We need to have things for people to do other than despair. So, we need to play our part. The people who are in the entertainment industry are ready to perform and do what they can to make people's lives more enriched and happy, and we know that there's a lot of people whose livelihoods depend on the theater in New York, and we'd hate to see them out of work. But unfortunately, that's what we're faced with right now, and we're going to try to do what we can to encourage people to go to the theater and go to movies and go out to restaurants and maintain some level of normalcy in their lives. Life goes on. You are running out of batteries. Does the power make me less of a human being? Well, there were some good things there. I'm a little draggy right now.
No, it's good. Anything can be edited, and it's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
There's some good things.
There's some great stuff there, baby.
Oh.